Okay. The upper room of gratitude. Why did I choose this? I thought everything that had been said about being grateful and being thankful had been said. Everything that's been written has been written. And I thought, how do I approach this in another way? Because gratitude is that key. It is absolutely at the heart of that brightly lived life, that life lived out loud, that life that is powerful, that life that is absolutely it's happy, because that's what we're here for. We often wonder, what is life for? What is my purpose? What is God about? Life is for us to be happy. That is the will of God. Ernest Holmes said that the will of God for you and for me is anything that fulfills us, that does not get in the way of somebody else's joy, of their fulfillment and their expression. So God is not here to judge us or to do anything other than or control us, but God is here to fulfill us, and we are here to fulfill ourselves in that same promise. So let's look at this idea of the upper room. Okay, the upper room of consciousness is the high state of mind that we assume when we think about or contemplate spiritual things. This is from Charles Fillmore, who did lots and lots of work on metaphysical Bible interpretation. It is a physical description of mental and spiritual posture we must take in order to not just become aware and receptive, but to actually understand, assimilate, and use that guidance that we seek. So that is the upper room, that we assume a consciousness of that room before we even get there. Now, Ernest Holmes wrote this: the world is saturated with divinity, immersed in reality, and filled with possibility. I want to say that again, because, man, that is powerful. The world is saturated with divinity, immersed in reality, that's capital R, by the way, and filled with possibility. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think that most of us were raised that way. And when I was out at the grocery store yesterday, I certainly did not hear that from the clerk. I certainly did not hear it from other people around me. And yet I know this to be true. I know this absolutely to be true. But we must rise up in consciousness and align with that truth, because it is the truth of our own limitless possibility. Raymond Charles Barker said it this way: an expanded experience will never happen until an expanded consciousness precedes it. And it's the same idea that Einstein taught, that you do not solve a problem at the level of the problem. You must rise above to that level, that consciousness of solution, which is already fully present in that infinite potentiality. So now, in traditional Christian theology, the upper room represents a place of prayer, a secret, quiet time and place that you prepare and set aside for the habitation of your Lord and Master. Now, don't get stuck in the language. Metaphysically, the word Lord means the activity of the spiritual I am as the ruling consciousness. That's what that means. It is the I am. It is the divine that we are. It is the truth of our being. It is the upper room that is already at residence within us. Lord is the creative power within each of us. And Master simply refers to the authority, the dominion we give to that I am. We choose to have conscious I am dominion over our thoughts and to cultivate the greater knowing of the presence. That is what Lord and Master means. So don't get stuck in the language. And if you're rather new to this teaching, to religious science or new thought, I'm going to ask you to expand your awareness or your definition of God. Many of you, many of us grew up with the idea of God as some angry white man up in the sky with a list who has anger issues and has fallen off his meds. That is not the God. This is a God of presence. This is a God of energy, of presence that absolutely surrounds and fills each of us. So when we are fully engaged with that presence, our lives become real. Our lives become genuine. They become purposeful. So learning to court and to actually hear and live in and as the awareness of that presence is a gift of infinite value. So Howard Thurman is someone that I really like to read, and I study, and I enjoy him a lot. And he is known for his approach to liberation theology. He was also one of the teachers for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And this is what he wrote. And I really want us to take this to heart. There is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will spend all of your life on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. You will be living your life on the ends of a string that somebody else has control of. So it's important that we don't just assume the position of being. So here's what it is. We go beyond moving into that mindset of being very, I call it ohmy. We get very ohmy sometimes, right? Om, I am one. And it can become habitual and not necessarily as deep as we want it. So we need to go beyond the ohmy posture, go beyond being ohmy and shift the perceptions and be willing to stay shifted. Okay. I know you're wondering, when is she going to talk about gratitude? I'm getting there. In Science of Mind, we hear the phrase upper room, and yet the etymology is kind of different from what you might think. I always heard it in reference to the apostles when they had dinner with Jesus before the crucifixion, which, Thanksgiving, I should be talking about Easter, right? Who knew? So it was a Passover Seder. And think about this upper room. The apostles all followed Jesus up to it. It was a nice special suite that one of them, Paul probably, because he was such a control freak, and had a nice view, and they all got to pose first for a picture, that Leonardo da Vinci took of them. You've all seen it. They're all lined up. And then they got to eat. In fact, in my mind, it was a catered dinner. It was quite nice. And it was such a luxury setup, in fact, that they even had to have their feet washed by Jesus before they started cocktails and any of their appetizers. So it was very important that they come in with a clean consciousness. Hear that for a minute. The feet washing is about cleansing for the next part of the journey. But the real context for upper room is from the Old Testament. Now, I'm not a big Old Testament kind of girl, except that I have been finding more and more of it is really relatable. So in the Old Testament, David gave Solomon the plans for the great temple. You've all heard of Solomon's temple. And really, the only thing you need to know about that is that Solomon's temple, metaphysically, we're not looking at this literally or historically, but metaphysical, it represents man and woman as the body, right? It represents our body, because the temple had outer courts and inner courts. So it is a symbolical representation of the totality of you and of me, right? So let me just talk about this for a minute. The Old Testament is interesting because, God has gone through a lot of rebranding over the years. And God 1.0 was the angry, moody, punishing God. Then we get to the New Testament, where he seriously got rebranded and became the kinder, gentler, more user-friendly God. And now we are in a place of what I call God 3.0. We are realizing that God is not somewhere off there, but God is that presence within ourselves. And that presence is love. That presence is love. So the essential part of you and I, with that temple metaphor, is the upper room. We must leave the outer court. We must enter the inner court and realize, as the mystics did, that which we are looking for, we are looking with. Be it gratitude, be it peace, be it forgiveness, be it justice, be it any of those ideas and more. We already are looking for that which we have within, and it serves as a magnet to draw us to that, to draw those experiences to us. It is as if that is a compass, our inner GPS, our God positioning system. It is already within us. So in other words, we turn away from the objective, the material world, and its issues, its divisions, its fears, its limitations, and we turn our full attention inward to God, the universal subjective. It is that place of infinite potentiality. It is that awareness of infinite potentiality. But in preparation for entering into the upper room, which is that deeper place of contemplation, of receptivity, of understanding, we must assume the mind of oneness. We must assume the mind of connection in order to draw from it. We assume and we accept our oneness and we act as if, because it is the truth of who and what we are. But we can only do that if our eyes are single with the light of God, right? We have to turn away from all of those adrenaline producing distractions and stories that seem to be everywhere in our world. And believe me, there are lots of them. I'm sure you've heard. There are lots of them. And that turning away piece is pretty darn interesting, isn't it? It's really interesting. One of the teachers I love, and I'm taking a class with him right now all about Neville Goddard, is a man by the name of Galen McDowell. Now, Galen studied with Johnny Coleman. And if you know who Johnny Coleman she was fierce in principle and absolutely held the standard that we live not just as truth known, but truth demonstrated. So Galen posted this the other day: you can't be in fight mode and blessing mode at the same time. Transformation doesn't happen when you are trapped in your feelings of anger and fear. And let me say it again, because I need to hear it. Transformation doesn't happen when you are trapped in your feelings of anger and fear. So then I thought, I got to turn this around. When does transformation happen? When does it happen? It happens when we release our feelings of anger or fear. And as we release them, those feelings release us. A couple of days ago in Science of Mind magazine, there was a quote from Epictetus, who was one of the Platonian, as in Plato, not Plutonian, philosophers. And he wrote this: we are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by our opinions of the things that happen. That's what disturbs us, our perception, our judgment, our thinking about them. We are in a teaching that is all about cleansing our perception and changing our thinking, right? The idea is beyond the change your thinking, change your life. It's go deep, root, really, truly, lovingly scrape away that which has been hiding the beliefs we have been living according to, and be willing to transform those beliefs. Be willing to look at them, to lovingly bless them, allow them to be part of the tapestry, the fabric that moves you forward, and then create new beliefs. So when does transformation happen? When and how do we move from those experiences of fear, of limitation, of grief, of loss, into lives of peace, of fulfillment, of prosperity? You know, Emerson wrote that bad times have a scientific value. These are occasions a good learner would not miss. And I got to tell you, if Ralphie were standing here right now, I'd maybe have to slap him upside the head, because I tell you, I would really prefer to miss these times in some ways. I mean, I know that we have all chosen to be here. It is by right of consciousness that we are here. But the scientific value, you know, it's a lot of work, isn't it? So I feel that. And yet, do we give ourselves compassion for that? Do we understand that, yeah, we have chosen to be here at the soul level, and it's not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy. It's going to require a commitment and a dedication to consciousness. And we cannot take our ego with us into that place. We cannot take our judgments or our opinions with us into that place. You know, it is, again, we leave the outer court of the judgments, the opinions, the events, the experience. We move to the inner court, which where we rest in preparation. And we make sure that our feet are clean for this new part of the journey, that our souls are open and receptive. And then we move to the upper world, to the upper room, to the upper realm. So we cannot take that stuff with us. And yet at the same time, it would be so convenient to do what we call a spiritual bypass, or deny that any of that stuff happened. And I am absolutely not suggesting that that is a workable plan It might be workable for a day or two, and then it's going to come back and bite you in the rear end. So please don't do that. Spiritual bypass is when we gloss everything over. We put whipped cream on our garbage and we say, it's all good. It's all good. We get OMI, right? We get OMI, and it's a fake place. It's faux, FAUX, faux OMI, foamy. We get foamy. So, but that's not what we want to do. That is not what we want to do. We have to actually honor that place. Now, for the last several years, last 4 years to be exact, not that I'm counting, like so many of you, I have been walking a path of painful awakening, uncomfortable discovery, and having to scrape away my own fantasies of what I thought this country and this world and people were dialed into. And I've had to own my own participation in false beliefs, in comfortable historical narratives, in systemic racism, and gender inequality. Now, I'm a white girl raised from Newport Beach, so I'm real clear that I was raised within that system of systemic racism and gender inequality. And that's what I have been looking at as those beliefs that absolutely do not serve. They don't serve me. They don't serve anybody else. And so I have been diving in with every part of my being to uncover so that I may enter that upper room free of those things from the outer world, free of those judgments I grew up with, free of those ideas, and with the absolute true belief that God is all there is and I am one with God. God is all there is and all I am is God. So scraping away those things, but that isn't that what we do in this teaching? Isn't that what we do? Haven't we come here in communities like this one to uncover the stuff that's not working in order to create new, workable, sustainable paradigms of wholeness, of joy? That's what we have come here to do. We chose this, right? So I see life as a metaphor much of the time. And what I see is that all of us are being invited, pushed, pulled, and in some cases, drop kicked into the upper room. We are being made to go there. The path has gotten narrow. It used to be you could turn left, you could turn right. The path gets narrower as you go higher. As Michael Beckwith likes to say, we are being shaken to awaken. And I don't know anyone who has not yet been shaken, who has avoided the shaking. I don't know how you avoid the shaking. So it's time to embrace that shaking, to take it in as part of, this is the adventure. This is the adventure. Emma Curtis Hopkins taught us, this too is God, this too is good. Now, it doesn't often feel that way, and that's not bypass. That is about determining and declaring from within that this too is God and this too is good. Now, I demand to see the blessings and the information there in it. Lead me to that light. Show me that light. So I know that there is a context that we each must build within ourselves that allows us to observe, to honor, and to respect all that we have gone through. But we have to do it without reliving it, without resenting it, without recreating it or making it the bigger part of who and what we are. So I have discovered, as I have gone through this process, that all of those things, those frustrations, those injustices, the losses, whatever the pain is, they're all sacred, but they're not magical. They are sacred, but they are not magical. If I make them sacred and I honor them and look at them, uncover them, then they do not have the power to undermine me, to sabotage me, because I have put them out to the light. I've held them up to the light. I've chosen to make them the foundation. They are the foundation of my temple. But they're not the walls. They're not the floors or the ceilings, and certainly those things are not the windows with which I choose to see life. I choose to see with a clear vision. So those experiences that we've all had, and I'm talking decades, generations of collective experience and witnessing, I think they're foundational to our evolution as spiritual beings. So coming to a place in my own thinking about history and stories and even revision has been critical, because it has provided me a place to be compassionate, not just to myself, but to other people, as we have that sense of compassion for our own journey, whatever that struggle has looked like, whatever those victories have looked like, which have often opened up to more struggle, or as my husband likes to say, cans of worms holding cans of worms that are holding more cans of worms. As we look at that and regard it, we learn and can cultivate compassion and joy. And it demands a price. It does demand a price. We can't do this from that superficial level, from the Omi level. The price, you might think, is simply just forgiveness. That's part of it. But the other side of that coin is gratitude. She got there. Yay. It's gratitude. And so what I'm working every day to expand my understanding and practice of gratitude is that understanding that gratitude doesn't require a focus. It doesn't require a subject. Gratitude is a feeling. And it can be random. It can be non-specific. And I'm getting that there's a distinction I have to make. Am I trying to be grateful for what's happening? Or am I trying to be grateful in the midst of what's happening? Because there is a real big distinction to that. Wisdom teachings will always tell us that we are to be grateful in the midst. And when I try to say, thank you, God, for this, thank you, God, for that, not only does it put God outside my circle of awareness and externalizes that presence and that power, but it also just builds that greater sense of separation. However, there is such a sublime release that happens when I stop trying, or when you stop trying to force yourselves to say thank you for an outer courtyard experience, to put the whipped cream on the garbage, and instead invite the feelings of gratitude within that preciousness that we are. Melody Beattie wrote this, and some of you know who she is. She's a woman who for years has worked with recovery, which is a great word, from codependency, from addiction to our feelings of lessness, to addiction to those feelings, those beliefs that tell us we are not divine beings. And she wrote this: gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. So I know I can find a path to gratitude, no matter how circuitous. And I know that there's an opening if I can find that path, that feeling, there's an opening that happens. And it is within that opening that reconciliation can happen. And I begin to make sense of my past. And in that same space of opening, I can have peace for today. And in that same opening, inspiration and a vision for tomorrow finally have room to lift me up. Just remember what Rumi wrote and Leonard Cohen sang about, that it's the crack is where the light gets in. And all spirit needs is just that one little crack in order to get in there. And Ernest Holmes wrote, as the inner light dawns, it delivers the outer life from bondage. As the inner light dawns, it delivers the outer life from bondage. In other words, our experiences change. This is in line with the teaching that everything is from within out. So the gratitude practice I have, and I just want to share it with you very quickly, is that I will go into meditation and I will create first what we call a kinesthetic loop. I will take this finger and this thumb, this finger and this thumb, and hook them together. And then I will begin to imagine something in my life that I'm so excited about, past or present, something that I cherish so deeply, something that is so absolutely vital that I can't help but feel the presence of joy and feel grateful. For me, the place I go is the day we adopted my son from Russia. He was 11 months old, and when they handed this precious, beautiful boy to me, my whole life, just in that instant, became different. It transformed, and the feelings absolutely shone through me. And and my husband said the same thing. It was as if there was a switch. There was a shift in that moment. That's where I go to. And when I teach this, often in fact, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do it very quickly. Let's do this process, and we'll finish with that. So if you would be willing to just close your eyes and take a deep breath. And if you would put those fingers together, thumb and forefinger, and then loop them, hook them together, this kinesthetic loop, this hook, and drop down into that place that is the preparation for the upper room. And imagine, take your imagination, let it lead you to a time and place in your life when there is so much radiant joy that nothing else existed. Maybe your first puppy, a kitten, your child being born, graduation, coming down the stairs on Christmas morning and seeing the tree with lights, being healed, having that declaration from a doctor, you are whole, discovering this teaching, whatever it is, feel that feeling. Allow it to expand within your heart. Let it grow as a light that shines bigger and bigger and brighter and brighter. And as you do this, become conscious of your thumb and your finger and your thumb and your finger as they are looped together in the symbol for infinity. It is that symbol of infinity. Notice them, feel them, come back to that sense of gratitude, of magic, of delight, of joy, of release of that memory. Feel your fingers. And know that this is the upper room of gratitude. This is what God feels like. Now take this same sense of joy, this feeling, this bliss, this radiant receptivity to light, and surround it with something in your life or in the experience in the world that has been pulling at your attention. Come back to your fingers. Feel the joy. Look from your highest mind's vision to that experience in the world. Now come back to your fingers. Begin to see that experience for what it is. It is simply an experience, a temporary experience in the outer court. What matters is right here and right now. This gratitude, this God. And know that with anything that troubles the waters of your very being, you can come back and simply hook those fingers together, and you are back in the awareness of God once again. When you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. You know, we are choosing to invoke deep, resonant feelings of gratitude. Gratitude doesn't require an object. It doesn't need a focus. It doesn't need a reason. It's just a choice to feel. We know Ernest Holmes in this thing called You said, use your intellect, your imagination, and your feeling for the purpose of seeing and sensing freedom instead of bondage, joy instead of happiness, plenty instead of want, health in place of disease. You know, so this is what we do. We use all of these tools because they're all God, and that is all we are. We are that God. We are that power. We are that presence. You know, we choose, and this is the big gift. This is the big, huge punchline for this whole talk, is that we are learning to live in the present moment. And as we live the present moment of grace, of delight, of joy, of gratitude that comes from that upper room, that upper knowing, that lift, as we use that, then we have moved into what we would call miracle mindedness. We have moved into that. I call it an ordinary, actually. I won't even let my students use the word miracle. It's an ordinary. That is the consciousness of God. We want to cultivate what Ernest Holmes called the ability to live in the ever-present here and the everlasting now. And that means making the commitment to let that light in, let that crack happen, let it in, if only just a little. And the final thing I want to leave you with before I sing this beautiful song that a friend of mine, Greg Camblin, wrote, was from Prince EA. And he wrote this: when the past calls, let it go to voicemail, because believe me, it has nothing new to say. We want to live from this present moment. So if you will allow me, first I want to say thank you for allowing me to be with you. I am so blessed by being able to connect with you on this level where we are one, regardless of appearances. We are absolutely one on the inner, the outer, the seen and the unseen side of life.